Every person that you've probably ever met in your life has been screaming the secrets of their mind through their body. And the problem is that essentially almost no one has been listening. And the reason is because they just didn't know how to understand the language that the person was speaking. Why does body language even matter? If we think about the origins of body language, they go back way past the development of speech in terms of human beings and the evolution of who we are as people. So anytime human beings are trying to communicate with each other, there is this hidden language happening below the scenes in our body language. And it's something that is intuitively built into our brain to read. But a lot of us have lost the real accuracy or the ability to perceive it with real clarity. I want to try to start to re-unlock that side of your brain. And I want to give you some tools and tactics that help you to bring it to the next level. What is the difference of body language profiling versus psychological profiling? Psychological profiling fundamentally asks, what kind of person is this? Whereas body language is asking the question, what kind of moment is this person in right now? A psychological profile may give us context, but the body language is what's going to tell us the actual current story. If we just think about storytelling in general, context can sometimes be useful without the current story, but a story told without proper context can easily lead to a complete misinterpretation. When we can combine the proper context and the background with an accurate story, that's when real clarity starts to arrive for us. And I think that that is how body language profiling and psychological profiling kind of plug together to create this exponential explosion of understanding of the human being that's sitting right in front of us. I want to give you a couple of the most key, most critical skill sets that are going to define the difference between somebody who thinks that they know what's going on and somebody who can actually accurately read body language above 90%. So it really all comes down to this model that Chase has designed called the C5 model. Effective body language profiling essentially is going to be determined largely by your ability to filter out other potential reasons that you may be seeing the observed behavior, which a lot of the time have nothing to do with your actual analysis of what's happening right now. This is because the vast room for subjective interpretation of the data. There is tried and true strategies that can allow us to still be incredibly accurate, even when we have a lot of subjective data in front of us. If we kind of just use a fun neuroscience metaphor, two homologs to this required strategy are really the fields of neuroendocrinology and archaeology. And both of these fields work with incomplete or uncertain data. And to avoid the misdiagnosis or false theories, what both of these fields need to rely on is disciplined scientific strategies that are all designed to actively seek disconfirming evidence rather than just looking for confirming what looks to be correct. We want to search for disconfirming evidence rather than just for confirming evidence. And by treating conclusions as probabilistic, we're making assumptions explicit and constantly trying to break our own theories. And these disciplines then can stay grounded in truth rather than falling into the old subjective belief trap. Let's for a second clarify this C5 model that I keep talking about. The first aspect of the C5 model is change. If I'm looking at a body language behavior, the first question I want to ask myself is this a static behavior or am I seeing something that is changing? Body language doesn't appear in still images, it appears in the movement of the body. And so we're looking for a baseline, and I want to be seeing a change from that baseline first and foremost. The next thing I want to be looking at is context. Is there some type of a context that I might be able to see that could otherwise explain the behavior that I'm observing? If someone just ran up a flight of stairs and they're doing some pretty heavy chest breathing, then that very likely is going to explain that behavior other than them being stressed out because of something that I'm saying, right? So is there anything in the current context that may explain this behavior other than the reason that I'm interpreting it? Next is clusters. Anytime that we want to make any type of a conclusion based on body language, we're always looking for a cluster. So if we just see one behavior on its own and we don't see any other confirming behaviors that help to confirm our theory, then we're likely just going to throw that information out, because it's better to err on the side of caution, like we talked about earlier, whenever we're trying to make our determinations. Next up is culture. And this is an important one as well. If I'm in Eastern Europe and I'm seeing someone who's maybe looking at me in the eyes a little bit less than someone who might otherwise do that in the United States, then that culture is going to explain the behavior. And I don't want to think that that means something to do with stress. So is there something about this person's culture that may explain the behavior I'm seeing other than what my current perception of it is, whether that be stress, behavior, or otherwise? And finally is checklist. Checklist is kind of the one that everyone wants to jump to a lot of the time. And this is where we can start to actually use the behavioral table of elements to look for those clusters and to start making our checklist of all the behaviors we're seeing within a given question that's being asked. That's going to be your job, really. If it's interesting to you to actually get good at body language profiling, you're going to watch an interrogation video or something, you're going to have your behavioral table of elements, and as you're going through the behaviors, use all of those, the C5 model, to see if there's anything else that may explain the behavior other than what the checklist has determined it to be, other than it being a stress behavior, for example. If you are able to implement this, and one other key factor, you will be more skilled than 90% of the so-called body language professionals in the world. And here it is. It's this one thing. A good behavior profiler is relatively certain, and the best behavior profilers in the world talk and think only in terms of probabilities. And the reason for this is that limiting cognitive bias and therefore cognitive dissonance is the difference between talented behavior profilers and the top 10 in the entire planet. What's the actual highest leverage thing that you could start doing today to start getting better at this stuff right now? The team's going to drop a link here in the chat. You're going to get a brand new copy of the behavioral table of elements. If you don't have one already, you're going to get something called the deception triangle. And we're also going to give you a course completely on the house. This is going to be your homework. You can call it your mission assignment if you want to. So when you get this new course, first I want you to just go through the behavioral table of elements and review how it works. Next, I want you to find a couple of YouTube videos, of which there are thousands, on interrogation. Now, when you watch the video, I want you to find an area in the video that you start to see, hey, there's a couple stress behaviors happening here. And then now you're going to take your behavioral table of elements and you're going to start training. Look at the BTE, and I want you to just focus on the top right-hand corner. And I also want you to look at the 4.0 language indicators, which are located at the bottom of the BTE. Now you're going to start watching that section where you observe the stress behaviors. If you are making a DRS rating, the rating should start at the start of a question and end at the start of a next question, which means interviewer asks subjects a question. Before they even start answering the question, you're allowed to start making ratings on their body language behavior. That rating score does not stop until the interviewer starts to ask the next question. You can start making your very own DRS rating based on observed stress behaviors. You'll see we're looking for anything above 11 is going to tell us what? It's not telling us that there's definitely deception, is giving us the probability of deception. And if we were really good at figuring out those probabilities, that's what's going to allow us to profile behavior above a 90% accuracy level. And if you can do that, you are one of the best in the world. So best of luck on your mission. Thanks again. Take care, everybody.